Hi, welcome back to My Favorite Mistake. I'm Mark Graban. Our guest today is Theresa Rose. She's a brand and business crystallizer, a strategic co-creator, and a certified speaking professional. She works with experts in their businesses to create one-of-a-kind visual brands they can draw on a cocktail napkin. She has more than 20 years experience in consulting, marketing, and business management, and that drives her strategic thinking and creativity and the frameworks that she uses. She's had senior management roles in marketing and product development for a Fortune 100 company and for high growth startups. Teresa is an award winning author of several books, including Mindful Performance: How to Powerfully Impact Profitability, Productivity, and Purpose, and Your Daily Dose of Mojo: 365 Days of Mindful Living and Working. And I thought this was fun from the bio. Teresa has, it sounds like you literally have this award, the Most Enthusiastic Award from Mr.
Yes,
Mosman's second grade class. Like, is that framed on your wall, or tell us about that?
it's not framed in my wall, but you know what? You just gave me a really good idea. It's actually one of the, I would say, the most profound accolades I've ever gotten was most enthusiastic in second grade. And I'm a chronic overachiever, so that's saying something. When I was growing up in high school, my mom used to call it the shrine, my room, because I had so many different awards and things. But the most enthusiastic award, I remember it. I remember coming home with the little white certification. And by the way, this was so long ago, Mark, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Okay, it wasn't when we gave out certificates to everyone, so it was very novel to have
Yeah.
gotten it. And it was much different than everyone else's. Everyone else's were like, Jimmy was like, uh, best in math and greatest speller and eraser helper, cleaner eraser cleaner helper, and mine was most enthusiastic. And I went home crying to my mother and said, I got this award and I don't even know what it means, because my teacher had said, don't worry, you just ask your mom and she'll tell
What?
you. And
Yeah.
so when I went home and told my mom that I won this award and showed it to her, she said, she snapped her long painted fingernails and said, Teeter,
Mhm.
that's the best one you ever could have gotten, Lady Jane. That is going to serve you well throughout your whole life. And you know what? She's absolutely
Yeah.
right.
That
It
stuck
was
with you for
it
sure.
did, it did, because
Well,
enthusiasm to me, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I get passionate about, and of course, we're going to talk about all the mistakes I've made along the way. But what I feel really strongly about in sales or persuasion or influence is there's really just three aspects to it. One is clarity, which we're going to
mhm,
talk about, and two is enthusiasm,
mm,
which is the fuel that propels that clarity out into the world. And then there's divine timing. And so the timing we can't really control anything about, but we certainly
mhm.
can control, I think, those first two, which are clarity and enthusiasm.
Yeah. Your enthusiasm has not faded, it
No,
seems. Not at all.
no. And I don't even drink coffee.
Good. Well, I do. I mean, I'm drinking tea
Well, I am
right
a
now.
tea drinker occasionally, but I have kicked the habit of coffee, and I'm still enthusiastic. It's just what I am.
Yeah. And I mean, think about the most enthusiastic award. Like today, don't they say it's better to praise a child for their effort, to say you tried really hard, than it is to say, like, oh, you're so smart?
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Yeah, as I think about that, I think effort is far more important than outcome. And I grew up chasing after the A's, and to my detriment,
Yeah.
because I was and am smart, and so I liked that validation and
Hmm.
the proof, if you
Yeah.
will, of how smart I was based on and the problem with that, of course, is that I identified my own worth off of that. Where if I got
Mm-hmm.
the occasional lower grade,
Yeah.
and there was a phase where I got a lot of them in a short period of time because of other things. But then you attach yourself to that. So
Hmm.
I really do believe that it's how we show up that's more
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Because being called smart, that's more of like, an inherent trait to some degree, as opposed to something that it exhibits growth mindset, effort
Exactly.
and
Yep.
enthusiasm and
Yep.
things that you can be proud of and lead to good outcomes,
Right.
maybe more reliably. Or like you said, if suddenly now you feel not smart, that's a big blow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I'm gonna call you, of course, Teresa. What was the childhood nickname that you threw into the story there? Your mom
Teeter.
called you what?
Teeter.
Teeter.
Teeter. Yeah.
Okay.
Like teeter-totter,
Yeah.
that's kind of like how my mood was on a regular basis, was
Oh.
teeter-tottering. So Teeter was my nickname. Yeah, and I still am.
Okay. Again, we're joined by Theresa Rose, and we're going to talk about your work and clarity and crystallizing a message. Um, Interesting word that you use there. But the main question, the first question at hand here, what would you say is your favorite mistake?
My favorite mistake is thinking that I could do what my mom could do.
Mm,
My favorite mistake was believing and hoping that I could do what she did so
hmm
successfully. My mother, uh, passed away in 2006, so it's almost 20 years,
hmm
and it
Yeah,
feels like yesterday. Oftentimes, we just passed, Mother's Day, big holiday. So I was
right.
thinking about her, and she was an incredibly successful woman, and she was a revolutionary of her time.
Mm,
I was the only child that I knew at the time growing up that had divorced parents. I had every other friend that I had, all had, a stable nuclear family. At least on the surface, it looked stable.
mm,
And so my mom was definitely a trailblazer, and she went from her role as a nurse to owning her own business in direct sales.
mhm.
And I'll tell you, the answer is yes. She had a pink Cadillac, so that answers the question that
Right.
what's on everybody's mind is,
Uh-huh.
did she have a pink Cadillac? Yes, she did. Many of them throughout the years.
Yeah.
And I saw firsthand growing up as a child in the most developmentally important time in my life. I saw this company that I loved. And I could see that it provided for us. I could see that it had great product. I used to play with it. I
Mhm,
mean, in the pink showcases, the two heavy pink showcases that my mom and I would schlep around in the Midwest, and in blizzards to strangers' houses. I would open up the magic of that showcase with all the different sample tubes and colors, and I thought it was amazing. I thought it was amazing that my mom could make her own hours. That although
mhm,
they were always, she started at 9 o'clock on the dot every day, uh, it, which told me a lot about what you needed to be successful as an
mm,
entrepreneur. But
mhm,
I grew up thinking. Of course, I had my years of time when I hated it too. When I was dropped off in the Cadillac in middle school, in the height of bullying season, and
mm,
I was very awkward, weird, husky, insecure little girl, and I
mm,
wanted nothing more than to be invisible. And so to be dropped off in
mhm,
a pink
mm.
Cadillac by a full glam mother in a fur coat with diamonds and singing "I Will Survive," you get attention. And
Yeah,
uh, and
yeah,
so with the exception of that kind of window of my life, I thought, wow, I could maybe do that. And the reality is that I made that mistake twice, thinking that I could do it because I fell in love with the idea, and
mm,
really tried. I really tried, and I was a hard worker, and as I said, I'm smart, and I could, I saw it growing up, so I knew it better than anybody else did.
mhm.
I could mimic recruiting interviews when I was 8 years old. I could
You'd
tell
heard it a
people,
lot,
I had
and
heard it
yeah.
so often, and I could see the nuances. And the reality was, I wasn't destined to do that. And
Mhm,
so at the time, it was a mistake, and it was a very painful mistake, because I had a lot of self judgment about not
mm,
doing well, and not loving it the way I thought I would love it. Uh, and it turns out, when I look at it in the rearview mirror, wow, was that the best thing I ever could have done?
mm,
Was try something that I thought was my destiny and fail at it,
Hmm.
because then that opened up an opportunity for me to do what I'm really designed to do.
Hmm. So was that coming right out of college? I know you had a degree
The
in
first
business
one,
management, and
yep,
then
the first one was actually not when I was out of college. It was so went to college right after high school, went to California and followed a boy. That was actually not my favorite mistake.
a
That
mistake.
that was a mistake, but it
Yeah,
was not my favorite mistake,
yeah.
and so when I came back to my hometown after that very painful year, I w that's when I started, and I actually quit college, to try to do this,
Hmm.
because of a lot of other reasons, but that was
Hmm.
essentially the main reason was I didn't think I needed to. So I tried it when I was 19. And then I tried it again when I was in my, I will say, late 20s. Late
Hmm.
20s, I tried it again before I really landed in what I was doing in a corporate role. And then I proceeded to go back and get my degree when I was in my early
Yeah,
30s.
yeah. So was that direct sales? Was that a quote unquote side hustle before that term was popularized, or that was a full time
For me or
thing?
for
Well,
my
for your
mom?
mom, did she quit nursing, or was she
She quit
still
nursing. She
okay?
quit. So she
Hmm.
started in Mary Kay in 75. Can you imagine? I mean, oh my gosh, the music alone in 1975 would be fantastic to be growing up in. I remember
Yeah.
all of the
Well,
things she used to listen to.
and the
Uh,
Cadillac of that era was still pretty enormous.
Oh, huge. So she actually had a little bit of window where she was doing both, the
Okay.
nursing and the consulting
Hmm.
and the recruiting, but it didn't take my mom very long before she was able to create
Yeah.
something that was full time.
Yeah.
So it was only a side hustle for about 8 months of her life.
Yeah. Okay. And then, I mean, looking back at it, are there certain factors that you think led to that difference between what you wanted to do or what you thought you could do in following your mom's path? Was there why do you think it didn't work out for you?
I think that it didn't work out for me. Well, the bigger reason why I think it didn't work out for me is because I believe that I wasn't supposed to do it. So that's number
Uh-huh.
one. But
Okay.
how did it
Hmm.
manifest itself in kind of the everyday failure was I think the first step, when I was younger, still in my teens, I had a lot of other distractions.
Hmm.
I had a lot of other distractions,
Yeah.
and I could give you the names of them, but,
Hmm.
it was just I wasn't ready to be, in that hustle, uh, environment, right?
Hmm.
It just
Yeah.
was I would have rather at that time in my life punch a clock, go to a temp job, show up for 8 hours, do what they asked me to do, get my time card signed and leave. That
Hmm.
was where I was in my life at the time. And then
Yeah.
the second time that I tried it and failed, I would say that the bigger prohibiting factor wasn't that I wasn't mature enough because I certainly was. It was that I wasn't secure enough.
Mm.
I wasn't secure enough. It took a lot of courage to talk to strangers,
Mm. Hmm.
right? It took a
Yeah.
lot to figure out how you could do the volume enough to make it work. And my
Yeah.
mom, was really strategic about how she did it. She built her team quickly and with depth. So she very quickly moved out of the sales aspect of the role and was in leadership
Uh,
and was managing her team. And so I never could get past the sales part to get to the leadership. I
mhm.
just couldn't sell enough because I couldn't open my mouth enough because I was insecure about who I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, in a different product line, in a different setting, I worked in high school in a retail job at a mall, selling video games, computer software. It was all right up my alley. But, as a awkward, shy kid working in retail, really forced me to get better at talking with strangers.
Hmm.
That was my job,
Yeah.
and I had to at least do my best. And like in hindsight, it doesn't seem like that should have been such a skill to develop. I'm still working on it, I guess.
Aren't we all?
I didn't want to do that forever, but it was a fun thing to do. High school and college,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
did help me develop some interpersonal skills,
Oh,
though.
100%. I
Yeah.
have had so many jobs. I mean, I was a pool attendant when I was 14. I was in McDonald's at the drive-through. I was a temp for unbelievable amounts of jobs. Secretary. There's just so many different roles that I've played in my life that honestly, I can look back now as I look at what I think is and feel confident in sharing that I have a robust portfolio of services that I deliver, and I'm proud of them. I'm really,
Hmm.
really proud of who I have become and
Hmm.
what I deliver and the value that I deliver as a crystallizer. And I can tell you that all those dozens and dozens of jobs, and even the unpaid jobs like chief washcloth runner and product fulfillment officer for my mom's business,
Hmm.
right? When I was there riding shotgun in the pink Cadillac, I can tell you that all of those pieces are now about who I am. None
Hmm.
of them were mistakes. None
Mm.
of them were mistakes.
Yeah.
Even the really, really painful ones.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how you kind of mentioned earlier that the failures or the mistakes set you up for future success.
Yeah.
So, I'd be curious how that played out, whether that was through, kind of initial moves or kind of leading ahead to the work that you do now. Yeah. How did that tee you up for something better?
It teed me up for something better because there's nothing quite like having a mistake land in your world, a quote unquote mistake, a failure or a
Mhm.
loss. That's really how we see mistakes. How that kind of emotionally charged experience can change you.
Mhm.
When you have those kinds of mistakes, whatever they may be and whomever they may be, you experience it on such a visceral level that it's almost like you don't know the benefit of it when it's happening. You
Mhm.
never know the benefit of it when it's happening. You just
Yeah.
trust, well, you learn to in your life. Like and even now, when I make mistakes, I I fall into the trap of responding to the initial negative part about it,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
judging myself for it
Yeah.
and second guessing and what could I have done and yada yada yada. But the reality is as you continue to grow as a human in a growth mindset, you talked about that
Mhm.
earlier,
Mhm.
how important that is. When you do that kind of living and working, and you experiences these mistakes, what you realize is that gratitude will help you look at it with clearer eyes so that you can see the benefit in
Mm.
it. And the
Mhm.
sooner you see the benefit in any sort of experience, the more you can integrate that gift. And then it becomes something that you can lean into. But if you constantly
Mm.
look back on things and say, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or I wish that didn't happen, or if I could just delete that from my memory banks, when you act like that, you don't get the juice. You don't get
Mhm.
the gift
Mm.
of that experience.
Yeah. And when you say, quote unquote mistakes, and earlier, you said, well, not really mistakes. I mean,
Right.
that's a very kind of Zen perspective. I don't know if that's kind of accidentally, coincidentally so, or I've had a guest on who was previously in his life a Zen Buddhist monk. And we kind of talked about like that perspective of like, well,
Right.
it was meant to happen. Like, it'll lead to something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I definitely believe in that. I have a strong, grounded uh, belief in the beauty of life and the meaning of life, and that
mhm.
nothing is accidental, and that the gift is always in there. In fact,
Yeah.
it was the very first speech that I ever wrote. So when I got into professional speaking, it was 15 plus years ago, and I got it from writing my first book. And my first book was written as a result of my mom passing away. She was the
Hmm.
catalyst to the entire thing. So I knew before she even died, I said to her, "Ma, someday I'm going to write about this and people are going to realize that they don't have to be afraid of death." And she tapped her long painted fingernail and on the acrylic coffee table and said, "I have
Hmm.
no doubt, Teeter, I'll be hovering." And that little seed of an idea that was happening in the depth of my grief of losing my best friend,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
it, it was it was the seed that became a an approach to life, which is there's always gift in the gunk. There's always blessings in the pain. There's
Hmm.
always opportunity in the mistake.
Yeah.
And so that kind of process of the gift in the gunk has been a belief system of mine that I have held strong with, especially during the really tough times, is
Hmm.
find the gift, find the gift, find the gift, find the gift.
Yeah. And what, I don't know if that the title of the book you wrote about your mother was not in the bio. Was that
No,
a
it wasn't in the
third?
bio. It wasn't in
What's
the
the title
bio.
of that book?
That's Opening the Kimono, A Woman's Intimate Journey Through Life's Biggest Challenges.
Ah, okay. So people can go and find that book if they're interested. So thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that. Before we talk about the work you're doing now, I can't help but share the talk about the pink Cadillac kind of triggered kind of a thought and a memory I'll share briefly. My first job out of college was at General Motors. In a lot of ways, especially that first year there, I thought, oh, what a mistake. It was an awful environment. It's not what I thought I was signing up for. But that job happened for a reason. Things got better. I learned so many lessons. It was good that it all happened. But the sort of trivial aside is I was working at a plant that made engines for Cadillacs. An old friend of mine from high school was working at the assembly plant in Detroit, Hamtramck, that did the Cadillacs, and he had a rotation through the paint shop. And if I remember right, I think he met Mary Kay because
Oh,
she would come to the factory and choose the exact precise pink
yep,
that she wanted. So
yep.
I at least remember hearing
Yeah.
about all of that, even though the Cadillacs had gotten smaller by the mid 90s.
Yeah, that's so great that you mentioned that because that color of pink was Mary Kay pink. No other car could have that color
Mm-hmm.
but
Oh, it
Mary
was
Kay
very
pink.
custom for her. Yeah.
Yeah, and as I am reflecting on my life, and your comment, when we first set up this conversation together, and you said, what's your favorite mistake, and I thought about the Mary Kay issue. I want to share when I was very young, maybe I was 7 or 8. I I absolutely adored my mother,
Mm-hmm.
and I adored the way that Mary Kay Cosmetics made her feel special and then made me
Mm-hmm.
feel special. I
Yeah.
loved that she won diamonds. I loved that she had bumblebee pins. I loved that she would win ribbons. I
Mm-hmm.
loved all of that. And of course it also touched on my perfectionist overachiever who got, the recognition was just off the charts as far as how much I valued it. And I wrote Mary Kay Ash with a pencil on lined paper
Yeah.
and wrote her to 8787 Stemmons Parkway. I still remember the address.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary Kay Ash, chairperson,
Mm-hmm.
and I basically said how much I loved the company, how
Mm-hmm.
happy I was that my mom was a successful director, but I had a worry, and that worry was I really love the company, Mary Kay, but I don't know if I'm supposed to be a director also. I know that my mom would really be proud of me if I did, but
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like I want to be on stage. I want to be in the entertainment field. I
Mm-hmm.
really like doing comedy and I like, performing for people, but I don't know what I should do. What do you think I should do? And Mary Kay Ash wrote me back
Oh.
and said how impressed she was what an impressive little girl I was, and
Mhm.
how thoughtful I was, and how that she wanted to give me the advice that I should pursue my heart, my dreams, and I should do what makes me happy, and that my
Mhm.
mother will be proud of me no matter what.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, and it was on pink paper. How cool is
Course.
that?
Yeah.
And then I look back on
Yeah.
that. That woman was one of the most successful chief executive officers of her time,
Mhm.
male or female.
Mhm.
And she started that business in her 60s. She
Oh my,
was
I
a
didn't, wow.
revolutionary.
I didn't know she started it in her 60s.
She
Wow.
started it in her 60s. That she was revolutionary. And
Yeah.
so the thought that that powerful person in the top echelon of business sent a written note back to an 8-year-old,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's
That's cool.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you shared that
Me
too.
too.
So, um, might ask you to share also, in the work that you do, um, with organizations and around marketing.
Yeah.
If we'll lean into the word mistake and maybe, kind of put on pause the whole, oh, they're not really mistakes. But look, I mean, people do make, I would call them marketing mistakes, and I would own up to some of those. I mean, what are the most common mistakes that you see or help people recover from, or even help avoid when it comes to clarity and crystallization?
Yeah. Well, I will say great idea looking at the differentiation between the mistake from a marketing standpoint. I absolutely have made countless mistakes,
Hmm.
countless mistakes. And I would describe a mistake in this capacity with being something that is unclear and unsupported
Hmm.
and expensive
Hmm.
and without the results that you seek. So that's a mistake in that way. And what
Yeah.
I've seen are the same mistakes that I made when I started my business as a thought leader. Is it's not enough to be good at what you do. You need to be able to crystallize that and clarify that to such a degree that everybody can understand exactly what it is that you do.
Hmm.
And so what I found in my business was I was really good at what I did, but I just wasn't great at describing it and making it clear,
Hmm.
crystal clear.
Hmm.
And so my mistake was A, not doing the deep dive work of really understanding my differentiating factors so much that I could draw it on a cocktail napkin. I could come
Hmm.
up with some certain words, but I always had to work so hard at trying to find those words, right? It's like you just try to keep throwing big, huge 10-cent words at it, hoping that it lands to
Hmm.
show that you're different than everybody else. And it never works. And
Yeah.
so the result of that is you get really frustrated because you're spending unbelievable amounts of time, money, and energy on trying to make those 10-cent words work. And
Hmm.
they don't. And so I see the mistakes that happen with people are number one, they don't clarify what makes them different. They just keep
Hmm.
throwing more and more words at it. And then the second thing is that they think that they can like buy it. They can buy
Mm.
the success. If I buy this PR firm or campaign, if I
Right.
become a member of this networking organization, if I buy myself into this and all those different things, it'll break it open, and it never does.
Mm.
It might
Yeah.
do it a little bit, but it doesn't take it to the level of catapulting it into a movement
Hmm.
because it really isn't you. It's like you're paying for these 10-cent words to go out into the world more when the reality is you just need to know yourself a little bit better. And because
Hmm.
when you know
Mm.
yourself better so clearly that you can draw it, when you know it to that level, like a child could understand something,
Mm.
then you show up with that level of enthusiasm that's just authentic and real and
Mhm.
palpable, and people feel it. You don't have to have the perfect words and the perfect pitch and the
Mhm.
perfect call to action and the perfect case study. You can literally just show up and be you as long as
Mm.
it's the real, deep, true you,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
that only comes from a level of clarity that you can draw.
Yeah. When you talk about those three types of or three elements of a marketing mistake, unclear, that's very clear. Expensive is very clear. And then when you say unsupported, I wanted to ask a follow-up question. Does that mean like marketing claims that aren't supported by the delivery of that service or product? Or is it even just like unsupported and that it's not authentically representing the
It's
person? And
it that's the most important part, is that it's not authentically representing, because what I see, how I see things in my view of the world for businesses, and it's regardless of what business it is. It could be a solopreneur and it could be enterprise level and anywhere in between, because I've crystallized and created models for all of those. Is if you look at it, it's about vision. It's about what is this vision for this business and what makes it different than everybody else. It's like what I call a spirit print. It's like a fingerprint for a business.
mm,
It's different than everyone else's. And
mhm,
can you see it, right? So that first part is about vision, and you got to get really clear about that. And then you go to the marketing steps, which you're going to create the brand, and you're going to create the positioning, and you're going to do all of the amplification that you want to do. That's all great too. But the reality is you don't see the money until you close the deal. Sales. Okay,
mhm,
so the vision is that clarity, drawing it on the napkin. The amplification, that's the marketing that creates the right words and making sure you're doing it in the way that's authentic in you. And then it's that third part about it that's really about, are you closing the deal?
mhm,
Are you closing the deal? And if you're not
mhm,
supported by a level of clarity, if you're not
mm,
supported by having enough confidence to show up in your authentic way, because anybody that tries to sell something that's not them, they're not gonna be good at it. They might
yeah.
be good quickly at it. This is what my mom taught me. She very, very, very rarely had what they would call chargebacks.
Mhm,
Right? So
right.
very rarely, insignificant numbers of chargebacks, because she was so solid in her delivery. She was never trying to sell anyone something they didn't want.
Mhm,
And she would notice the signs, and so she had all this really strong ability to be able to convey that. That's what I mean by supported. Are you supported by a belief in the business so strong that nothing anybody says to you will shake you? Are you supported by having the right materials that are going to easily be able to have facilitate a conversation, right? That's that
mhm,
cocktail napkin. Are you supported by your own voice and feeling confident in how you show up in the world, and being unafraid to be rejected? Knowing that
mhm.
there's three things people can do for you. They either challenge you, support you, or reject you. I just read that somewhere and I can't remember where. I wish I could attribute it. Challenged, supported, or rejected. And being
Mhm.
okay with all three.
Yeah. Mm.
Being okay with all three.
Yeah. Well, it's making me think because it's sort of like being okay with a mistake or a failure to close the sale. Can we think about it in a way that's constructive and forward thinking instead of just
Exactly.
beating ourselves up? Or
Exactly.
right?
What's the gift?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
gift in the rejection? What's the gift in the rejection, right?
Yeah.
Great salespeople will always deconstruct why the close lost, what
Mm.
happened, and how can I
Hmm.
iterate to make it better.
Yeah. Or maybe it just wasn't a fit and it wasn't meant to be.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then the iteration is, could I have seen that it wasn't a fit before I invested a significant amount of
There
time?
you go. Right. So instead of just blaming that factor, how do we learn?
Yes.
How do we iterate? I love
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to ask you about here when you talk about closing sales,
Hmm.
there's a phrase on your website about triangulated sales.
Yeah.
What is that?
So I love to study the energy of dynamics, of relationships, of transactions. And when we look at the energy of sales, the old school way of looking at it is a dominant and a submissive. You have a dominant buyer and you have a submissive seller. You have someone who's in power and someone who wants it, right?
Hmm.
And what that can do to people when they feel that people will say, I hate being in sales, or I'm not a salesperson, or I don't want to do the sales. That is because they are falling into the pattern of the power dynamics of the traditional sales, where the buyer has the power and the seller has commission breath, right? So that they don't want to do that because they don't want to be rejected. So the way that I approach that is to change the dynamics, to add a third party into the dynamics of the sales conversation, and that is the cocktail napkin. That visual of who you are, what you do, how you serve, what makes you different than everyone else, that becomes almost the third party that you energize in a sales conversation. So instead of me saying, well, here's who I am, and here, I hope you pick me, and I hope that you pick my business, and you think you're the one that's being evaluated in the sales conversation, you can triangulate that sale and then say, listen, first of all, fully listen completely, 100% to the person, and hear what their real pain is, and notice them. It's a full body sport. Sales, when you do triangulated sales, it's a full body sport. You pay attention to everything, right? And listen to everything, because that person will tell you all you need to know to be able to execute that sale. Then you pivot. When they say, enough about me, what about you, which will invariably happen, then you pivot to the triangulated sales conversation, to the napkin, and you say, this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this thing, not about me, not about our relationship or what the deal is, but I want to talk about this thing that lights me up. And when you do that, what you do is you change it from buyer and seller to peer and potential partner. You get excited about talking about that third part of the triangle so much that their energy starts looking at it too. Their focus starts looking at it too. And they go, ooh. And if you're good enough and you have the right cocktail napkin, and you're clear enough about what makes you different, that you can talk this and say, it's the hill I'm willing to die on. When you have that much energy around it and enthusiasm around it, you know that that person is either a yes or a no. They either want it or they don't want it. And so 9 times out of 10, when I talk about my cocktail napkin in a triangulated conversation, I hear those 3 magic words: I need that. And as soon as you hear I need that, it's all over but the crying and the check writing.
Yeah, right. It's the
Right?
difference between I want that, or I'd like that, I need that
Those are the
is
3
the
words. If you don't hear I need that, you don't have enough clarity.
Well, that's I think that's a good tip, and people can learn more. I can learn a lot more. I'm going to learn a lot more through. I went and got access to your 10-part video
Awesome.
course, so I want to tell the listener about that. There'll be a link in the show notes, teresarose.com/clear, Teresa with an H.
Yep.
So if you make
So
that mistake and skip the H, you might find someone else. teresarose.com/clear. But before asking you about that, I did want to ask, you alluded to doing stand-up and improv.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that. You said you wanted to perform and you're doing that, but how do you view, if you tell a joke that bombs or you do a set that bombs, is that a mistake? Is there a gift in that as well? How do you think about it in the context of performing comedy?
Well, in the context of performing comedy, the only way that you can get out of that and move through it without having it choke you is realizing that a bombed joke is just a lily pad and a launching pad for something else funny. So if you bomb a punchline, you stay in the moment, and you have something in your back pocket that you will say so that you can capture some laughter from your failure, right?
Yeah.
So it's this living, breathing dance between the comedian and the audience, and that's when you lean into crowd work. So again, everything that is a mistake, you can look at and go, well, what could I do to A, learn from it, but B, can I pivot? Can I take it from a different perspective? Can I look at it with fresh eyes, so I can evolve beyond that. So that's what I would say, and that's part of that improv background that I really love, is
Hmm.
that yes and mentality, which is there is
Yeah.
no, right? There is no,
Hmm.
you didn't tell a good joke. It's yes, you did tell a joke and no one laughed, and you get an opportunity to now add and do a little bit of maybe
Hmm.
physical humor, like, oh, I felt that. I felt your
Hmm.
silence.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be, you can turn that into something funny that then captures their hearts.
Hmm. And it seems like the best stand up is this very iterative process. I remember once watching a documentary Jerry Seinfeld did
Hmm.
about the steps of, and now like you see the Netflix special that someone's done, and it seems so crisp and
Yeah,
so perfect, but that might be a year's worth of iteration
yeah.
in small clubs, at open mics, and bigger shows, and like really, they don't go out and
Oh
that
no,
special is not the first time
no. And
they got it. Yeah.
I love talking about comedy for the everyday person. So as a crystallizer, what I also do is speech writing.
Hmm.
So a lot of people are amazing on stage, or they want to be, and they're not great at writing, or they don't want to write. They
Hmm.
just don't. They're not great writers. I'm a word nerd, and a lot of
Hmm.
people aren't. So
Yeah.
what I love to do is make people funnier, right? Create
Hmm.
comedy that is in their voice, what would be funny for them to say, right? Their
Yeah.
personality, their what's interesting to them, and give them the script. And that script takes time to craft and massage, and what's the right word, what's how do I do this thing. So it's not just about landing into perfection. You iterate, and you make mistakes, and you face plant along the way as you're
Yeah.
doing that. So when you see something amazing with someone on stage, there has been an awful lot of work with some word nerds
Hmm.
to make that as powerful as it is.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Again, we've been joined by Theresa Rose. I'm interested in this idea of clarity and crystallization, and thinking about how I represent my own business, which is basically a solopreneur business. So, the 10-part video course, the PDF on the crystallization process. Give us just a quick pitch or summary of why people should go check this out, and what they and I will, myself included, how we'll benefit from that.
Yeah, I just would love to have them come see what I do on my website. Clarity is my jam. That is my thing.
Mhm.
I love helping people get cocktail napkin clarity. And with you, Mark, your brand, your podcast is so great because it's so clear. It's my
Mm.
favorite mistake. And you know exactly what you're getting,
Mm.
and it's compelling, and it's evocative, and it's
Mhm.
emotional. So the more that you can get really, really clear, so clear that preferably you could draw it, maybe
Mhm.
even you could create something where it's like a mistake, but then there's a heart around it, a line, where you say no, a red line that you say no, but then there's a heart around it that goes, this is why it's so wonderful. Anything
Mhm.
that you can do, I encourage your listeners to think about whatever is that their next thing is, whatever is their next high stakes opportunity to persuade someone.
Mhm.
I invite them to look at, can you distill it down to its essence so clearly that you could literally take out a cocktail napkin and doodle it? Because when you can get that level of clarity where someone can see it in their mind, that's the destination to get them to yes, is when they
Yeah.
can see it and understand it and feel it.
Mm.
So come see me at teresarose.com and learn a little bit more about cocktail napkin clarity.
Yeah. I hope people will join me in that pursuit. So again, we've been joined by Theresa Rose. Teresa, this has been great fun. Thank you for a really fun conversation. Thank you for sharing your story and your reflections, and how you've continued to iterate and grow. So thank you for all of that.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
Okay, sure thing.